There is
under more.
Potentially. Why don't you check it out? Sometimes there's it says share
audio,
screen.
video. Yeah, share screen. Duh, right there.
No problem. Yeah, go ahead and do that and see if that works for you.
Choose a screen to share. Generic monitor, I guess.
Perfect. All right, there you go.
But okay.
So you can probably minimize Skype and then.
Yeah, let me do that. This isn't going to do us any good here. Well, you still got me, guys?
Yes, I do.
Can you see this thing now?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. All right. Cool. So this
and you can X out of the that little window if you want.
Yeah. No, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, Marvy. I thought that maybe I would try to make this one shorter so that we can actually dink with a little audio clip at the end to kind of make it less scary maybe for people. So we'll see how that goes, and that'll leave time for a little more questions as well if people want that. So my hope here is to just kind of make it an easy start so that people can see how you can get in there and tackle. We'll reiterate a few of the things from the previous talk, which has to do with certain aspects of it. Basically, that it's a trade-off in time. If you do it yourself, it does take some time to get to know the interface and to do the narrating and uploading, etc. But you're not having all that indirect outlay and waiting for people to respond to your auditions, waiting for people to get to read the book and then do the proofreading and all that stuff. So ultimately, I think in the end, at least for me, even if I have to redictate a whole book, it still ends up faster than if I just tried to hire it out. And of course, the money is right too. This time, the industry standard, as we talked about last time, is 6.2 hours for every completed hour. But even me as a beginner, my initial time was as good as 4 hours and as horrible as 7.6 hours, which isn't that much worse than the average pro, frankly. So I was pretty pleased with that. And I think that it has the potential to get better and better as I get slicker. Also as I have less horrible books, because this first one, the first one that I did, has Danish accents and some foreign words, and Helios has a bunch of Greek accents as well and foreign phrases. And so those are a little trickier. But even given that, had I tried to farm that out, it might have been hard to find someone who was willing to do a decent Greek accent. So I still think it's good in the end. When a person meets a stranger for the first time, initially that person may have an accent or a funny way of speaking, or even a weird tick like a snork or a snork every few words. And that can be so irritating and jarring at first, but you know how it is. Once you talk with a person a little bit and get their accent, all that kind of fades and you can hear what they're saying better, correct? I think the same thing happens in audiobooks if you're listening. So it's important to try to kind of get your immersion out of the way with the least intrusive things possible, and then kind of stay in that zone. And that's one reason, frankly, that I kind of like the single narrator as opposed to the dual narrator or multiple narrators that some people like, because every time there's a new narrator, to me at least, it kind of breaks immersion, although that's a matter of taste. So anyway, when you're doing this, you want to just find your settings with your microphone play with it a little bit, find what works for you, and then reproduce that consistently so that you're not having to go back and do new takes because your volume is different, because your distance was wrong, or you spoke at a different angle, or what have you. And that also has to do with the dictation style as well. You want to have your speed and cadence vary for characters perhaps, but otherwise to be reasonably consistent throughout the piece, which will allow variance for suspense to stand out a little bit more.
Dan, I had a quick
Yeah,
question regarding how do you handle dialogue when you're recording it? Do you have a different cadence there? Do you try to put the emotion into the dialogue? Do you record it separately? How do you do that?
No, I don't. I need the story to know what I'm supposed to be happy or sad about. And so I just kind of read it, and I just try to change my voice enough that people can tell who's a character. And in the clips at the end, we'll do some examples with something I recorded this morning from my current work in progress. And you'll be able to see a little bit, I hope, how the heroine's voice is different than the lady in the ER, but without trying to go over the top or too caricatured. And that kind of ties in with this particular slides. It's great to have your characters be recognizable. Accents can be kind of cool, but certain things are button pushing to some listeners with regards to too much in the way of stuttering or stammering. I have one character who has a really annoying sniff that he does all the time, but I'm sure as hell not going to do that in the audio because I think people would leave. So you have to be a little careful about that, and try to have faith that your words and your story will still carry the weight, and don't succumb to thinking you need a lot of gimmicks like a background ocean noise. This is not an old-fashioned radio show where people can hear the pop of the fly ball. It's the same for me with regards to male and female voices. Some people do like the dual narration where they hire a separate male from the female, and I think this is probably like dogs and cat people, and I think the people maybe who listen more slowly and have a lot of breaks don't mind getting used to the new narrator because they were going to have to do that anyway. I think for people who are more immersive, more rapid readers, a separate person is jarring. So I have made the decision to do both the male and the female voices. And so I do go up a little lower, I do go up a little higher for younger females or kids, and I do go a little lower for the male characters, but I try not to make it hokey. For me, that's a disruptive listener experience if I'm listening to an audiobook and it's a male narrator and he goes into this falsetto. For the women, it just gags me. So I think pick a lane, do it how you like it. If you like it, other people are going to like it too. You can't please everyone, and you can make yourself nuts trying to go too hard in this direction, if that makes sense. You want to try to minimize the things that are going to creep people out or jar people out of immersion. And so that's, some of these are vocal tics that we all may have, like clearing the throat or saying, and those a person can learn not to do. Some of them you can deal with regards for timing. If you have a cold, it's not the time to do it. If you're sniffled, take a drug or pick a different day. Make sure you eat something, but not something too loud immediately before, and you can control your environment in terms of extraneous noises as well, and that can make for a lot smoother audio for folks. That said, there's this concept of the Uncanny Valley, which refers to the phenomenon in which a robotic entity or animation is close enough to human to creep people out. It's so close, but it's not there. It gives a cringy Stepford sort of vibe to folks, and we live in a world in which handmade is celebrated, and knitwear comes with labels that say, any slubs is a mark of quality, not a defect, etc. And so it makes no sense, unless you're going to take months and months to come up with an audiobook, it makes no sense to spend your time trying to edit out every single breath. And if you listen, and I would encourage you to do that a lot, go on Amazon and go to your genre, and just everything that has an audiobook, click listen to sample. And in very short order, you can rack up a huge amount of oral memory and sampling. And so you can see the wide variety of voices that are there. And you can also see that there's a fair amount of breath noises and other noises. And so if the pros are not going to try to get every single noise out, maybe you don't want to either. We talked about some of this last time, things you can do to try to minimize clicks, etc. One technique when you do start to dictate is just to keep rolling with it. Greeks roll their R's. And so there were some times when my R's were terribly clicky or not rolled enough or too weird. And so I would sometimes say the same word like 6 or 7 times in a row, and then I would edit them out and pick the one that sounded the best or needed the least amount of clickage. So it's easier once you're in the zone just to do it again and again and again, rather than go back, find your place, get back in the zone, try to recapture that same volume, etc. That's what I have found anyway. So do what you can to control the noises, and then try to make sure that you are comfortable as well. If you've got pinchy clothes or an itchy seam, all those things that chafe you can make it harder to concentrate. There are some people who do a lot in terms of warm up. I kind of just get in there and start and figure I'm probably going to botch the first take or two of the first 30 seconds, and I figure that counts as a warm up. If I'm doing a Greek accent, though, I do read some things that have a lot of R's and certain of the other sounds that they do a little differently to try to remind myself. So those things are second nature. And I have actually a printed up sheet so that I would say tser instead of chair. It helps me remember those particular things. And then then you can experiment with you and your editing process to see if you are better to kind of go along like a musician and do a little bitty huff breath as you go, or whether you'd rather just do a giant big kind of breath and figure you're going to edit that out, which is pretty easy to do. You also want to double check your microphone and play it back to make sure it's on. It's so easy to screw up on Audacity, and I'll show you in a little bit, the input versus the output, and you think you're jabbering along and it's not taking. So the little stupid things, just expect that some of those are going to happen the first bit, but it becomes very easy for that to be second nature. One thing that I personally dislike in audiobooks are the ones that are just so dramatic, it's like a telenovela. To me, it's akin to explaining too much to a reader. I want the words to capture and not to be led by the ear quite so much. But I think they're genre standards, and I do believe it's true that just as when we write a scene, it's so vivid in our mind, but it may not come across that way to a reader without a little more word paint. It's the same with audio. You know your character, you know what they're feeling, you know the whole bit, but the listener may not. And so I've had to kind of force myself to be a little more dramatic than maybe I would have done. I think one thing I'm afraid of is going over the top, but I think a little bit more is sometimes good, and getting some opinions from some other people can be very valuable because, just as in your writing, you can write and think, damn, this is good. Oh, I like this. And then later you think, oh my God, this is so terrible. It's the worst thing I've ever written. You lose all objectivity, and having someone else read that, it's the same with audiobook narrations. You can stop being able to hear it objectively, and so it's good to have a few people who can listen for you and give you some ideas. Okay, so you're ready to start your audiobook. First, you want to make sure that you actually remember your book. So if you've just written it, this is perfect. And going forward, I am going to do my audio narration as I do the final edit for every book, because that works as a check for repetition and such, and I can tweak my final manuscript, but also it is fresh in my mind, and that makes for less dinking around. If I have to go back and do a book that I've written, a year ago, then I'm going to have to reread that book to make sure I know it really well. We already talked about the preparation that a person may want to do. When you start to narrate, it's important to have nothing but 3 or 4 seconds of quiet, or what we call room tone, in the beginning of that recording. And that's important for a couple reasons. It gives you something you can put into Audacity for what we call punch, copy, paste, which helps with edits. But it's also that which you'll use to sample so that you can do your mastering later. You'll use that for noise reduction, etc. So it's always good to start with that. Then you will dictate your chapter title with a little bit of pause, and then you just go for it. And I'll show you on Audacity, if you mess up, you can also label the track in certain so that it's easier to find that, so you're not having to keep a notebook of screw-ups. If you have to stop, and then listen back to get back into the zone. And then if you have a certain amount of time for narration, I have found that it's important to leave that last few minutes just to re-listen to the thing, so that you know it's a good take and worth editing. Or if you have botched certain things, you can go back and fix it right then. I just find it so much easier to make sure everything is good in one take, rather than try to go back 2 chapters ago, recapture the mood, etc. So here is a picture of, I'll show you live later and we'll play with it. But right now, here's a picture of an Audacity clip from Helios. And this part up here is called the waveform. This part here is called the spectrogram, and they show you different things. So when I edit, when I dictate, when I narrate, I just have the waveform. When I edit, I have both of them, because if you look at this thing right here, this looks pretty good. But when you look at the spectrogram, you can see that there's noise here and that there's a noise here. If you look at this here, it looks pretty uniform. But if you look down here, you can see this vertical line. It means that's probably going to be a click that something has to be done with. Other squishy noises show up too. This is probably a T or a D here that's delayed a little bit. But this most certainly is a vocal click, and this is a breath here. And so when it's time to edit, it's much faster to just say, yep, that's a breath. I'm either going to keep it for drama, or I'm going to make it less noticeable by decreasing the amplitude, the volume of it, or I'm just going to edit it completely out. So this is the screen that I use when I go to editing, and it's possible to label the track down here. So if this was a screw up right here, I could click here, Control B, and then I could say blah, blah, whatever phrase it was, so that I could know to go right back to that spot when it, if somehow if I missed the flub on the first take and couldn't do it in sequence, that at the end of the session, I could go back and put that in there. When it is time to do the editing and the mastering, there's this thing called Nyquist, which goes with Audacity. And these are a bunch of plugins. Some come with the Audacity latest version now, and some you have to get separately and add on. And there's a whole bunch of them, and I have not explored all of them. But RMS normalizes the thing that will keep you sane. This is the key to passing the checks. So you want to make sure you have that on your Audacity digital audio workstation, or DAW. The limiter is one. There's a declicker and a de-esser. You can get these either in Audacity. I haven't found they work very well for my particular clicks and S's, but there's another program I use which is great for clicks. And then there's this thing called punch, copy, paste, which is something that really smooths edits and makes that faster. So let me show you what that means here in the end. This is a picture of Isotope RX8, and this is the separate program that I bought. I think it might be on sale even right now for like $9. I think I paid $29. They claim it's $129. You know how that is. Anyway, they're listed in the references. But this is a really slick thing to be able to get rid of the clicks, which there can be a whole lot of them. This particular piece looks like it was about 9 minutes long. And in a matter of 2 seconds, it repaired almost 600 clicks for this particular thing. And so that has been very, very helpful to me. I'm a cheapskate, but it's worth the money to have that, I think. So the flow that I have and that has worked for me for doing the editing is, dictate the thing, listen right at the time, and then redo anything that you've screwed up. And then make sure you have that room tone that you can analyze later for noise reduction and use in your punch, copy, paste. Then remove the obvious breaths and squishy sounds. Listen for the flow. You don't want your narration to sound too choppy if there's too much space between the sentences. But you might want to adjust those spaces for drama as well. And then at the end, that room tone, since it's been put in punch, copy, paste, if you have to cover something over, it means you don't have this complete dead silence, which can sound jarring if you paste in utter silence. So once you have the edits, which is the way it sounds, the words right, those noises, etc., then it's time for the mastering. And that's how you will tweak the audio so that it can pass the ACX and find a way voices checks. So you do a noise reduction pass or two. That plugin RMS Normalize will make sure the noise floor is correct, that you have enough noise to not sound weird, but not too much to pass. Then you can do your clicks. Then make sure you have the chapter names there. It's easy to upload a thing with no chapter name. Then you want to double check the length of room tone. Each of these requires a certain number of seconds of room tone before the chapter starts and at the end of the chapter. And if you have too long, like 6 or 10 seconds, the reader will think something's wrong with the book, and these platforms actually won't accept it. If it's too short, it dumps a person right into the next chapter when they're not really ready for that. So there's a prescribed and very rigid range, which you want to make sure you have that that's a silly reason to have your book thrown out and rejected. And if you get rejected for Find Away Voices, you can resubmit something, and within 2 or 3 days, your book is published. If you get rejected for ACX, it might be a week or two before they get around to re-looking at that. So you don't want the silly stuff. And then at the end, you do a final ACX check. Then you save, export, upload, and back up your files. There are some other things that are worth doing as you go. One is, as you narrate the book, keep an eye out for what might be a good excerpt, either to use as the sample for the book, or because if you don't submit one, these platforms will choose one for you, and it might be sort of dry. You want to pick something that's suitable for work, so no cursing and no smuttiness or death maybe at that moment, but you do want something that is appealing and hooky and shows some vocal dynamic range. Another trick that I'm going to do going forward is to narrate the book as I do my final, because I think that's quite a nice symbiosis there. And then one thing, a pen name is, I think, a good consideration for someone who's going to narrate their own audiobooks. If you're Stephen King, people buy anything, probably a grocery list. But if you're just some author, I think there's so many terribly done audiobooks. There's a bias against author narrators among some, and I think a separate pen name or pen tongue maybe isn't a bad idea. So that's a consideration. While you wait for your book to get blessed and start to be distributed, you can be doing, and actually while you're doing your final chapters and your mastering, you can arrange for reviewers and set up promos and do a social media blitz. I have not done any of these, but I'm going to try to do it for this this story I'm doing for Sierra's story anthology this fall. I think that will pay dividends to try to promote it a little bit more. Even without trying, though, I did end up with a Nook promo and an Apple promo with my first story. They just said, okay, congratulations, you've been accepted. So they sent me this nice little slide, and I got featured as a romance deal of the month for June. So I think that just goes to show that there is less competition significantly in audiobooks. And it makes me think that if I had only tried to actually have a coordinated media blitz, that I might have owned the world, perhaps. The next couple of slides are references as well, like where you can get the isotope and different sort of places that you can get reviewers, etc. So you might want to check those out. And I think what I'd like to do maybe now is show you that clip that I did this morning and see if you can hear the difference with the different tweaks we'll go, and we'll do some live so you can see how easy that is. Okay. Do you have questions before we do that, though?
I'm sorry. I had a quick question regarding when you first started doing your readings, you were still new to it. Did you find you were becoming an actor at the end? And did that feel like there was a tone change at the end of your audio read, or did you feel it was fairly, flat across the board in the presentation?
Well, I think that's a fair question. I think I was kind of tentative. My background included a fair amount of dictation in which I had to be very clear. And so my diction was good, but time was of the essence then. And so I was used to dictating almost like a damn auctioneer, really fast. um, and so it felt unnatural a little bit to slow it down, and I was afraid, I think, of being too hammy, and so I think it was possibly a little flatter than maybe was ideal. So, of course, I botched that first novella because I stupidly charged in without making sure I had the RMS checks and all that stuff. And so I ended up redictating it anyway. So it was practice, and thank God it was just a novella instead of a real book. But I think I did get a little more hammy, a little more of an actor as I went along. And I think I'm now in a reasonable place that I'm happy with. What I try to do is I try to envision that I am telling the story or reading the story to some person 10 feet away. And that helps me remember that it is a story, it is fun, it is a performance. And it also helps me keep the volume appropriate so I don't kind of tend to soften up and peter out at the end. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely, yeah. I was worried. I was wondering if you had run into any of that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Does anybody have any other questions? You can chime in. Feel free to come off mute if you want.
Okay.
All right, cool.
If not, this is something I dictated today on Audacity on my current work in progress. And so down here, this is the raw take. Here's one after it went through the declicker. Okay, that's that isotope program. This clip is 1 minute or so, each of these little sections, so it won't take that long to. I'm not going to inflict a whole book a whole book on you guys, but in that time, that 1 minute clip, the thing removed 409 clicks. Okay, so that's kind of a big deal. And then here you can see on this one, this has a lot of color in the background and a lot of spikiness here. This one I have removed the breaths and so on. So this one is now edited, but we haven't done the mastering like the room tone. And I'll show you how that works. And maybe we can listen to these and you guys can see if you can tell a difference in how they sound. But I think before I do it, I'm gonna show you just the buttons quickly. So right here where it says audio track, this is how you decide. You can click this to get rid of the spectrogram or go with spectrogram only or audio only. These are your buttons for record and stop, go to the beginning, go to the end, and record. There are tools you can use to tame down high spikes or whatnot. Here is where you would set up your Blue Yeti microphone or whatever else you were going to listen with and record into. This is, you can grab this here and make it bigger or smaller, but this also will do it horizontally. So this is helpful if you're going to try to narrow in. Suppose we like right here, we might decide that there's a click right here probably that we're going to hate. Can you guys see that vertical spike? So if we decided we were going to try to hunt that click down individually, you could make it bigger, 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 bigger. And then you can see, I don't know if you guys can see, that the waveform gets wonky here, kind of spiky, and it gets really wonky here. Can you guys see that? So one could just say, okay, snip, just highlight this, delete, highlight this, delete, and probably get rid of that click. Now, you don't want to do that with a whole novel. That would be a real pain. But this view is helpful to look for certain clicks to see if you need to kill them. And it makes things like a breath which this is, stand out like a sore thumb. And so it makes the editing quite a bit faster. This is the little bit of room tone here at the beginning. Okay. And actually this makes my audio booth sound terrible because this is crap. Look at all this fuzz and this and the spikiness. But I had the door open because it was hot in there. It's not air conditioned. So it's good enough for demonstration purposes, but it is not nice room tone for real book production. But let's just listen to this raw 1 minute. This is a scene of the heroine in the ER, and you can see that I have two voices plus a narrative voice, and let's see if you guys can hear clicks and creepy swallowing noises and the breaths. So we'll just listen to this raw and tell me if you cannot hear it.
Diana, I don't think it's playing back.
What's that?
Yeah, we're not hearing it. I don't think it's playing.
I wonder. Huh. Oh, that's terrible because this was going to be helpful. Rats. I wonder what
Try going to your speaker's headphones and then choosing your regular, the one to the right, the next one, and change your output to maybe your regular output and go ahead and hit play.
All right.
Nope, still not playing.
Well, crap. Oh, that's disappointing. I don't know what to do about that, I'm afraid.
Actually, try your microphone. See if we can take it off. Do you have a standard microphone, or are you just talking?
No, I'm just sitting in front of my computer. I did that because I thought that it would give you the best chance to hear. Let me turn this up and see if. Well, no, that's recording. That shouldn't do it. Arg.
Yeah, you may check and see if you're maybe down at the bottom right where you have the audio, the little audio symbol of your computer. Yep, your taskbar. Yeah. Doesn't look like it's showing. Yeah, down there, and then you might be able to choose your audio out. Sometimes the audio out is not taken by the Skype. Actually, yeah, go ahead and open Skype again. Let's see if we can maybe change your. It might be something with Skype as opposed to your settings on Audacity.
So
cool.
Here?
Yeah, go ahead and click more on the ellipses, and then audio video settings.
Okay.
If you scroll down, I have crying children. Nap times are upon us. Maybe try your. Yeah, let's try your speakers, maybe, because that would pertain. No, maybe your audio. Yeah, your microphone. Let's see. Right next to it says default. Yeah. Let's go ahead and try that. And then let's go ahead and go to Audacity and see if that fixed it.
Okay, let's see. All right, third time's a charm. We'll see. Fingers crossed.
No, actually, go ahead and stop it and change it. Your output. The audio back from output to the Realtek. Yeah, that one right there.
Oh yeah, duh. That might.
That's okay. And now go ahead and hit play. See if that works.
Okay.
Nope, we're terrible. It's all right. If you output it as an MP3 real quick, you can put it into the chat and people can listen to it afterwards.
Okay, so afterwards though.
Yeah, it would have to be afterwards then. Yeah.
Okay, I can do that. All right. Well, I had hoped to be able to show you raw versus how it sounds declicked, so you could see that there was no degradation in tone, and then kind of what the final edits were. Well, I guess. All right. Tell you what. I can still put this into the chat later, but is it useful for you guys to see the steps of mastering, like how to do the noise tone and stuff, or maybe not since you really can't hear it?
I think maybe walking through the steps on how you edit it might be helpful. I think people will believe you that the audio changed.
Okay.
If you just show them how you do
Okay.
it.
So now let's pretend that this last one, I'm going to make it smaller. This last one is perfect and we're just happy with it. So, so what we would do would be we would highlight a bit, and then we'd go up to effect, and then we would go to noise reduction. Okay. And so then you have to click get noise profile. And so now it has listened to that little thing that we just did and figured out how noisy the room was and whatnot. And so then we can highlight this and then go back to that same effect noise reduction. And now you do apply. And now it will have tweaked the noise that we have on here. Now, just for fun, we can see under Analyze if it'll pass the ACX check, and it's not going to because we haven't done anything besides noise reduction. But let me just show you. So you click ACX check, and it says that the peak level is too high, and the RMS is not right. The noise floor passes. So this is good to know. So now there are some tweaks that we can do to make sure it passes. So now we can go to Effect and we can go to RMS Normalize and say, okay, fix it. So you see that the waveform changed, and now we've got even worse spikes. So this definitely isn't going to pass the peaks. So then you go to Effects, and then you go to Limiter, and then you apply your limiter. And now it's bumped those down again. And so now we can see if it will pass or not. Golly gee, it passes. So this is what made me tear my hair out with the first time that I did my narration, because I hadn't played enough with the gain and the settings and those sorts of things. I did not have that RMS normalization to use, and so it failed no matter what I did. But it's very, very easy to do that. And then we would make sure, if this was the clip we were going to upload, we would make sure we had some of this room tone at the beginning and the right amount at the end. But then all we do is export this and upload that. And it's very easy to do that, and it's very easy to pass the standards for ACX and find away voices. So what seemed like a very daunting, scary process is really not too bad if you break it down. It's still time consuming, but it's not a thing in which one has to have an audio engineer degree by any means. These few little tools make it quite doable. So I will save that, and then you say maybe as an MP3 I can put it in the chat.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, if you just save it, you can probably just drop it in, and it probably will accept it.
Okay, so let me go back to this. I figure I might as well do it while my guru is here. So how can I put that in there, you think?
See the little file for, yeah,
That's,
and then go
yeah,
ahead and select it.
find it.
You're in Skype. So did you save it into a folder?
Yeah, it's oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. This is a side conversation that we need to have about folder management.
Well, I could use some help on no doubt on that. Well, crap. Yeah, it's oh nope, there it is. Okay. Smarty pants. There it is. So actually we don't want the Audacity one. This
Oh,
one though.
yep.
Okay, so open that and we'll see if it went in. Ha! It did. Okay. So ideally that'll actually work. And then you guys can listen to the raw one first, then the declicked one,
Mhm.
and then the final edited one that has the breaths edited out and the spacing adjusted, etc. All
You,
right,
you
cool.
you may have to hit the submit, the little blue button to send it. There you go.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank
No, it's
you.
all right. That's why they keep me around. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. I know it can be very scary to a lot of people to see these type of things, but I know it's fairly straightforward once you do it once or twice and you got everything all set up. It's actually something
Yeah.
that's very doable.
Yeah, it is very doable. And actually, one thing I should have mentioned earlier is you saw I on the Audacity toolbar, I kept going up to effect for the punch, copy, paste, and the noise reduction and all that. Had to hunt for that a little bit because I don't do that now. Now I have these hotkeys. You can do a keyboard shortcuts for all these things.
Mhm.
Um, in which you just hit Control X or Shift M for amplify, whatever it is that you find you use all the time, and it's really fast instead of having to scroll up and down all those long toolbars. So that's worth doing in the setup as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I'll hit the stop recording so we don't have